What's up, YouTube? Okay, today I'm going to be doing a low skin fade on my boy Mike. At the end of this video, comment below, let me know how I did. A rating system from 1 to 10, 10 being the best, of course. And if you see any mistakes I did or anything I could improve on my haircut, comment below. The first thing I want to do is to create a canvas on his head, something that I know the length of, and it will be easier for me to work on instead of so much hair. So I'll do so by using my 1.5 guard open. I'm going to make sure that around his entire head is cut down to that 1.5 guard open length. Next, I'm going to take my 1 guard and I'm going to have the lever all the way open and fade right underneath that 1.5 guard open. Just to reiterate, I'm doing this from one side of his head all the way to the other side of his head. We want to stay consistent so we have a consistent fade. Now I'm going in with my trimmers to create the bald line, and these trimmers are my soft trimmers. So these are what I'll use on babies or young adults and seniors, or anyone that look like they have sensitive skin. I'll use this underneath the neck, at the back of the neck, in sensitive areas, just because they don't hit as hard and they don't have that sharp feeling. There's a reason why I'm going in with these trimmers first. I have another trimmers which are my hitters, and hopefully I get to show you why I do that in this video. We're gonna use our Babyliss shavers to really get it down to skin, and what this is gonna do is give us another transition into the longer hair on top, which is gonna make the fade pop a whole lot more. I'm not balding out the whole entire area where I touched with my previous trimmers. I'm gonna leave like a little strip in between that 1 guard open and my shavers. Now I'm coming in with my hitters. These, ladies and gentlemen, is my Babyliss Gold FX skeleton trimmers. Unfortunately, I did not zoom in on me getting rid of that little strip that I leave. However, you can see that I'm attacking very close to the line, and this is gonna blend the previous trimmers to my shavers, just because these trimmers is right in between. To share a little tip, whatever you're using to cut hair, if you're turning it this direction like I'm doing, which is upside down, it cuts a little bit closer. Alright, now the balding part is done and we don't gotta worry about that again. I'm gonna go in with my clippers all the way open with no guard and create a strip about 1 inch. If you get confused with the inch remark, I used to make my guidelines very small because I thought 1 inch was very small. But what you really want to think about is just give yourself room to fade. Make that guideline wide enough that's not taking up too much of the head, but you know, a good amount of room that you faded. The more you stretch out the fade, the more blurry that thing looks. You feel me? Now we're going to be tasked in getting rid of that 0.5 guideline, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the lever halfway and start attacking the middle ground of the guideline, so that's about half of it, and then I'm going to close the lever all the way to get rid of that pesky line at the bottom. Now I'm going to detail whilst I'm doing this, so I'll be opening and closing the lever. The higher I go to longer hair, I'm going to be opening the lever, not passing that line that I made with the guide. And as I go down towards skin, I'm going to be closing the lever. The closer I get to skin, I'm going to be closing it all the way, of course. Remember that tip I gave you about flipping your cutting tool? Well, that's going to come in handy right about now. The half line is now out of the way, so we're gonna blend the one open and the half guard together. The first step to do so is to lighten that area up, and I do so with the one guard closed. This is not gonna take the line out completely, but it's gonna make our job easier and give us a transition point in between the next guard that we're gonna use and these two guidelines. Now we are going to get that half guard out, and we're gonna attack that line that is still there, to be honest. And we're gonna use our corner, so we're not taking off too much hair. We're just gonna flick that line out. We're gonna basically break the line up so the colors could kind of bleed into each other and create one unison look. I forgot to mention, but the back of the head, it grows thicker than the sides. So what you may have to do in this scenario right now is take that half guard off and use the clipper by itself all the way open. I don't think we need to do so in this video, but if we do, we will do that exact same thing that I just explained. Alright guys, let's move on to shear work. Now what we're going to do to prep the area is saturate the hair with water. What that's going to do is help us control the hair even more. Whilst it's wet, I want to comb through the hair, and I want all the hair to lay how it naturally lays and also how he styles it. So I could kind of get a glimpse of the future, if you want to say, and get the style that I'm trying to, combine into the fade. So now what I'll be doing, I'll be taking vertical strips of his hair around the parietal ridge, and I'll be using the shortest hair at the bottom where I cut with the clippers as my guide for cutting the top. And whilst I'm cutting, I'm making sure my fingers whilst it's grabbing is parallel to his head. So I'm not trying to dig into his head, I'm just trying to make it straight to the sides. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna try to connect that faded area into the longer hair on top. That middle ground that I kind of touched with box graduation, I couldn't get it all the way down to that 1.5 guard open because my fingers are not small enough. So what I'm gonna do, I first went in with the 3, and I hope I closed it because that would have been a smart choice, and that didn't really work. So I'm gonna go in with my 2 guard, and I might play with a lever. I might have it closed right now or open, I'm not sure. And after this, I'm gonna just use shear work. So I'll be doing shear of a comb, and I'll go back to box graduation And I'll keep trying to solve the problem to lighten that area up so all the colors kind of blend together from the dark to the lighter area. Alright guys, I'm gonna tune out for this part of the video and tune back in when we get to the next process. Often I'll use my texturizing shears, that's the shears with the little teeth on one side, to blend areas in that I don't want to take too much bulk off of. What I'm doing now is prepping the hairline. I'll use my one guard and I'll open the lever all the way and go with the grain, eliminating unnecessary hair from the hairline. Now we're gonna get into the lineup portion, which many say brings the whole entire haircut together. So I'm gonna start by making a straight line on the vertical bar, not pushing him back but staying as natural as I can. So that's like to the edge of the eyebrow. And now I'm gonna attack the horizontal bar, which is right on top, and I'm gonna stress do not push your clients back, because the grow back will be awful. Be careful, be mindful of lining it up. Sometimes you have a tendency of going back little by little, and before you know it, you've gone back far enough without noticing. And now when it comes time, like I said, for the hairline to grow back out, there's gonna be a lot of stubble. Now I'm gonna use the advantage of having a straight blade on my trimmers, which all trimmers have a straight blade, and I'll use that to help me keep on line. What a little tip that I do, I don't just go on to another section. When I cut one area and I make that perfectly straight, I kind of move it over a little bit where half of my blade is on a new portion of the hairline and half of it is still on the old portion where I lined up. And I'll still try to hit that line exactly, not hit it more hair, but exactly where I hit it before. That way the hairline starts to go further and further to one direction until it hits the vertical bar. Now what I'm gonna start doing soon is lining up that C cup area, and for the C cup area you want to make your rounds as round as possible, and remember, do not push him back. For a little help here, you can use your finger and rest it on a part of their face, like I'm doing right here. I'm resting it on his eyebrow, and I'm using that as a pivot. So when you have a point on their head, first of all, that helps stability to make sure your hands not shaking, and two, you could use that and just turn your wrist. Turning your wrist is gonna create that circular motion you need to allow it to be as round as possible. Remember, you want to make your rounds as curvy as possible and your straights as straight as possible. Now look at that lineup. The exact same thing we did on the other side, we're not gonna do on this side. I'm gonna be giving my boy a hard side part. So a hard side part is basically using your trimmers to separate, making a crisp line between where the hair is long on top and the hair is short on the sides. And he has a natural side part already. A lot of people, or most people, or everyone, have a natural side part. So what you do, you just want to put a solid line where their natural side part is. And the general rule that to keep in mind is, when you make a line at the bottom, you want to make a line on the top, because a line has two sides from what I've learned. All right, we're getting to the very top of the hair, and we're kind of getting to that very end stage of the haircut. So you're not gonna really be able to see what I'm doing too well, so I'll explain as much as I can, and hopefully you could follow along. So the first thing I'm gonna do after I saturate his hair with water to give me more control, I'm gonna make a vertical strip, and with that vertical strip I'll divide his head into two halves, a left side and a right side. So now I kind of given myself individual areas to work with so I could keep on track with the haircut. Now with that vertical side, I'll be doing vertical cutting. I'll use a strip in the back, where in the occipital bone area, and I'll use that length to help me cut the middle. So you're gonna see in a moment, I'm gonna kind of grab the back, the hair on the back of his head, and kind of over direct the hair on top of his head to the lowest point in the back and cut that. So now with that part being cut, I'll use that low point to cut everything else in that vertical strip. After I cut everything in that vertical strip, now I have a guideline that can go over to the left side of his head or the right side of his head, and I'm going to use horizontal sectioning, or I believe this might be cross-checking, but for the most part I know I'll be using horizontal sections. And with that strip in the line, I'll be lowering the left and the right to the length in the middle, if that makes sense. On the right side of his head, as soon as I hit the right edge, I'll be doing box graduation and point cutting to help blend that area into the sides. So the top and the sides are going to be blended together using box graduation and point cutting. I'm now gonna be using my razor. So what I want to do, I want to put a little bit of a protection barrier between his skin and the razor, which I'll be using my oil that I made. Is a special all natural blend that I created from scratch, you know, not to brag or anything like that, but it's basically gonna help the razor glide over his scalp so there's no irritation, no redness. Also, the oil that I'm using prevents or is resistant against irritation and inflammation. The reason why it's good to use razors on lines is so it just looks crisper. It makes the line straighter and makes everything pop so much more. we are at the last step of the haircut, which is the styling process. So what I did, I just worked some clay pomade into my hands, worked it through his hair, and I'm blow drying it through and combing it in the direction that I want the hair to sit. He's gonna have a comb over and he's combing over to the right, so I'm gonna comb it that way while I'm drying and setting it in. There's only one thing we gotta do now, and that's dust him off, clean him up, show him the haircut, and call it a wrap, y'all. Alright, y'all, that is the cut. This is the end of the video. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for making it this far. If you have any feedback or just want to say hi, comment below, like the video if you really enjoyed the content, and share if you think anyone else needs to see this video. Peace.